Hey, everybody, and thanks for joining me on another episode of Straight Jacket White Rabbit. My name's Adam, and I'll be your host. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about the poisoning of America. I want to talk to you about the poisoning that's going on in a lot of different countries. And I want to talk to you about the things that they are doing specifically to our food and our drinks. So, a lot of people know that there are pesticides that every year hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people protest against. These pesticides are harmful. A lot of them have been determined to cause disease, such as cancer risks and things of this nature. But they're allowed in our foods anyways. These chemical baths that our natural foods are given are harmful to our bodies in more ways than one. Now, on top of this, you add in the things that they use for preservatives to make your food last longer on shelves, to make it last longer in your home. Food dyes to make your food look more appealing. Bleaches. Believe it or not, some of your foods are bleached, like your breads. Most people don't look close enough nowadays at their food to know what they're actually consuming. I didn't for years. But here's the thing. Not only is our food getting less healthy, but it's also just blatantly at this point getting controlled. Food corporations have made it to where it's almost impossible, unless you have a large plot of land, to feed yourself and your family homegrown foods. We've lost our relationship with food, you guys, and this is an important thing. People blow it off way too easily, okay? We had a connection for thousands of years with our food. We handled our food. We knew where it came from. We knew exactly what it was. People can't really say that anymore for the most part. We're eating chemicals and pesticides, and things that we call poison are acceptable in small levels in a lot of our foods and drinks. I'm going to talk to you guys about a lot of different ones, things that are wrong with our food today, chemically speaking and otherwise. Aspartame, you guys, is a poison. It has negative effects on the human body. And they've found ways around this. First, they promoted it as a healthier option. And then when people started to gain knowledge on what aspartame was, then they just started rebranding it with different verbiage. Basically just using the same product with a different name. Now, it's not just aspartame that they're putting in our food, you guys. Like I said, they're putting pesticides and preservatives and artificial sweeteners and corn syrups. All of this stuff is very unhealthy for you. A lot of the chemicals that go into these foods actually harm your reproductive abilities. They harm your physical health. They've been linked to causing cancer in some cases. So why do we allow it as a people? Have we gotten so lazy and so used to the convenience of a fast food meal that we just don't care anymore about what we're putting into our bodies? Well, here's the downside. Even the foods you think you're eating that are healthy are not as much as they used to be. Those tomatoes and lettuce, carrots, and other vegetables you put in your salads, they've all been sprayed with pesticides for the most part. Many of them have been enhanced with chemicals to help keep them preserved while in transit and at the stores to be sold. And the problem is they're stripping some of our foods, even at the genetic level, you guys. They are genetically stripping our food of its original nutritious properties. I brought it up a minute ago. Look at the breads you eat. Most people don't even know what real bread looks or tastes like because they're so used to eating this. I'm not going to give a brand, but these store brands that are bleached and processed within an inch of their life. You know why we didn't have allergies to weird stuff when we were kids? When I was a kid, nobody was allergic to peanut butter. And if they were, it was a very, very rare thing. Okay? We're getting all these new food allergies, and you've got to wonder if it's because of all of the stuff that they are now adding into our foods. You're not even getting real peanut butter anymore, you guys. Most of the peanut butter that I see these people buying at the grocery store, it's the most processed stuff that you can possibly find. Yes, I'm sure there are nuts in it, but it's not real peanut butter, you guys. We've lost, like I said, the connection to our food, knowing what our food is and what's in our food. And this is a slippery slope to go down. Okay, books all around the world talk about what happens when governments get control of the food supply. Most of them don't turn out well for the population. And I'm not just talking about extreme cases like in famines and science fiction books like Soylent Green. Although now, that may be a bigger concern than you thought. Here's what I mean. They've now moved on to something called lab-grown meat or cultivated meat. Cultivated is just another fancy word for grown in a petri dish. And while scientists will claim that there's no real difference in the meat themselves, this isn't true if you read the material data. The first round was years and years ago, you guys, and they tried to push it out, but it wasn't right. There was something wrong with the meat. In almost every case, it was crumbly and almost dry, even when it was wet. It had this consistency of almost a dry graham cracker in your mouth with a slight bit of moisture. They've gotten better at this, you guys. They've fixed a lot of the taste and texture problems with these meats now over years of doing scientific testing and adjusting and using different minerals and properties to grow these meats in these labs. They even said that they were working on the flavor to make it more savory, like real beef or chicken, etc. might be. Here's my problem with this. They say that it's no different than the regular meat because the way lab-grown meat works is they take basically a biopsy from a live animal and they cultivate it in a lab using enzymes and other materials into these petri dishes until muscle fibers and other things begin to grow. Once the sample is the required size portion, then what they do is they set it in a solution to rinse off all the excess enzymes. Yummy. Then they package it up to sell to you in your local grocery store. Well, if it's exactly like real meat, because it is quote unquote real meat, then why did you need all those years to perfect your recipe and get the texture right, and get the flavor right, get the smell right, the consistency right? It's because they're feeding you a lie. You don't know the truth, and in all honesty, is you don't know what they're putting in this. Most people in our country don't even know how the FDA work. Do you know that the FDA is basically watchdogged and payrolled by the companies that they're supposed to be watchdogging for us? The FDA is supposed to be watching out for the better interest of the people. But how are they doing this when they're paid by the companies whose food they're inspecting? Not only are they paid by these companies, but they allow these companies to present their own facts, their own scientists, their own nutritionists to vouch for the quality of their food. This is why I don't believe anything about the FDA. I don't believe any reports they've ever released about food safety, because the FDA, by its own design, is bought and paid for by big food conglomerates, big pharma as well. All your FDA approved stickers mean nothing, because at the end of the day, if you have enough money and you're going to make them enough money, they'll approve you, because you can get Bob the Clown, your scientist, to feed them the facts. And while not every company gets away with this, you'd be surprised how many of these companies, these giant food conglomerates, get away with this on a daily basis. And not only do they pay the FDA, you have to remember, let's use yellow dye, for instance. The yellow dye that makes your favorite color of Fruit Loop. I'm just kidding. I don't know what your favorite color of Fruit Loop is, but we're going to use this as an example. Your yellow dye that the FDA approved to put into your Fruit Loops, see, that big batch of yellow dye they have sitting in their warehouse or their manufacturing plant to use in your food, that's just one batch that they've paid to clear the FDA, to be cleared by the FDA. But the scam continues, because they don't just have to do it for one batch. They have to pay per batch for the FDA to regulate it. So the FDA is making money every single time these people make a new batch of this yellow dye. Do you really want to trust your health, your family's health, to a conglomerate who's being paid off by big food, big pharma, and God knows who else? Now, lab-grown meats to me are wrong for multiple reasons, okay? I like to know where my food comes from. I am a meat eater. And that's not to say vegetarians or vegans are bad. I was actually a vegetarian for many years when I was younger. But I enjoy my steak. I enjoy hamburgers. I enjoy my meat. But when I look at these meats, I'm appreciative of the animal who gave its life so that it could feed us. And I'm aware there are going to be people out there who are like, they didn't give its life was taken. That's the way livestock works. You're not going to get any sympathy out of me about that, because of the fact that my family used to own a farm. I'm well aware of how a butchered pig gets butchered. I'm well aware of how you butcher a cow. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be rules so that it's, ethical, and so that it's done as humanely as possible. I absolutely believe there should be. You have to respect the land. You have to respect the food that goes into your body, the liquids, the drinks that you put into your body. And you can't be respecting your body if you're putting things into it that you know nothing about. When I go to a grocery store, I don't want to go look through the hamburger section, for instance, and I have to be very careful that I don't pick something that was grown in a petri dish. I'm not even fond of buying any kind of produce or beef or anything like that that's shipped from out of state. I like locally sourced beef and vegetables, because I don't trust the process of how long they hold it and transport it. And if they're transporting it from a further distance, then you know that they used preservatives, because they're not going to risk losing time on the store shelves or wasted products. So I like to buy as much of my food as I can from local places. But let's be honest, in this world, it's not always an option. It's just not. And it's getting worse by the day, because all of these large companies are owned by the very large companies. And they go under the guise of different names, but they're all related companies. The big ones own the small ones. The small ones own the tiny ones eventually, because they get bought up and in the sales of things, the sales of these companies. And they just acquire the best ones here and there so that they keep their monopoly, they keep their control. Well, now you have the government getting into food more and more every year. And we all know how I feel about our government. I love my country. I'll say this again with all of my heart. I don't trust 95% of my government as far as I can spit. I just don't. It's the nature of the beast. I don't trust secretive things, and our government is about as secretive as it gets. You really want them in charge of your food supply lines? It hasn't worked out real well for any other countries that have done this. You really want to have to stand in food lines at a government-run store? You want to trust that the government is going to purchase and stock in supply in these stores food that's in your best interest, food that's safest for you, food that's not ultra processed and doused with chemicals until it barely resembles the food you intend to buy. Now, lab-grown meats especially scare me for one reason, though, you guys. Not just because it's going to be government controlled at some point, I guarantee you, but because we've already proven that we blur the lines of rules that are supposed to be standard operating procedure in the food industry. And I'll tell you what I mean. Years ago, there was a slaughterhouse in the Southwest that had pigs and sheep. Now, they were for slaughter and they were for food. And I'm okay with that. Like I said, I eat meat. But here comes this part that scared me. I learned through friends of mine that this same place, the same plot of land, just on the farthest side from their normal livestock, they had a pen full of pigs that had human blood and human organs. Well, slightly human blood, I'll say, but human organs in these pigs that they were doing for science, supposedly. And I got to thinking about this, and it really disturbs me because on site they have their own processing plant. And by processing, I basically mean butcher. Okay, it's where they're killed. The slaughterhouse. Now, a lot of these places have slaughterhouses on them, and I don't find it disturbing. But the reason I find it disturbing here is this. There didn't seem to be any real safeguards other than a few fenced areas to ensure that these pigs didn't end up with the other pigs who were being slaughtered for food consumption. One mistake, one gate left open, one board broken, and you could have a contaminated food supply that would basically make anyone who ate it technically, by all definitions, a cannibal. You're eating food with human DNA in it at that point. And people go, well, you can't prove that that's ever happened, and you can't prove that it hasn't. Do you really want to trust that big of a thing to what appeared to be about 150 feet? And I understand that people say, well, they're doing that for medical reasons and research, so that you can get organs when you need them for people who have to wait on these lists for years. I'm not fond of that idea, but I understand it. But why do these animals have to be kept in the same places where you keep the animals you slaughter for our food? This makes me beyond weary of anything that comes from that site. So now we get into the lab-grown meats, cultivated meats. They've already admitted that the way they do this is the biopsy of an animal, which is just a small piece of living cells, a little bit of tissue. How do you know where that little bit of tissue is really going to be coming from? And I'm not saying that they intend to feed us people, although they could. We've seen science fiction writings that have come true that were a lot stranger than Soylent Green. And here's why I'm saying this, you guys. In my job, I talk to people all across the country for different reasons. And one of the reasons recently that I was speaking with people across the country is they had us calling ranchers and farmers, asking questions about their cattle associations and pricings and basically the general welfare of the industry. And it was alarming how many of these people said that our food supply is collapsing. We're running low on cattle. We're running low on these things because what happened is about a couple of years ago now, the prices went so high up to the ranchers for their cattle that they weren't keeping enough breeding stock. They were getting greedy, in other words. And the government and all these other companies were buying it up like crazy because they knew that the prices of meat were only going to keep going up. And then at some point, the levee was going to break and people were going to start buying less instead of more or the same amount that they have been. Now, you guys, I want to stop here real quick and make a comment. Like I said, I'm not saying that they're going to feed you people. But I'm saying that if you don't have a relationship with your food, if you're not sure even where your food comes from, you don't know what you're eating. That is more my point. Although my other point has validity to it, okay? It has a valid point. They could be feeding you those pigs that I talked about with human organs. How would you know where they got the biopsied skin from? Do you think they're going to let the FDA in to make sure that they're getting it from that animal? Well, we've already explained to you that the FDA are paid by these companies per batch. I don't see that it would be any different with cultivated beef or chicken or pork. So you're kind of paying the fox to watch the hen house, if you know what I mean. Like I said, I just don't trust it. I don't like the fact that our things of all our foods have become so chemically based and unhealthy for us that even when you try to eat healthy, like I said, you're really not. With our sodas and our corn syrup and our tons of sugar that are added into everything. There are sugars and things that there shouldn't be sugars in, guys. Look at the labels the next time you're at the store. Okay, certain things in this world are not meant to have sugar in them. We're adding it just to kind of make it taste better and be a little more addictive. And yes, sugar is addictive for those of you who didn't know. Now, I'll eat cane sugar all day long before I eat any of the aspartame or artificial sweeteners. But like everything, it's in moderation, you guys. You have to start being smarter. We all do as a people. We have to demand to know what's in our food. And when it's something that's unacceptable, we have to not be afraid to speak out and tell the people running the industries, if you make this the way we're telling you not to make it, we'll stop buying your products. Because you have to remember, we have ultimate control. They're doing this because it's a cheap and easy way to make the food and to make it last longer so that it doesn't hurt their bottom lines, it improves it. But if we all stopped buying certain things until they fixed the problems, they wouldn't have a choice but to move. They wouldn't have a choice but to change their ways. We are their base source of income. So the next time you're at a grocery store or grabbing your kids a quick snack, remember to look at those ingredient labels real hard and realize that some of the things you're putting into your body, you might not ever be able to take out. They could be killing you. Just food for thought. I appreciate you all. Much love to every one of you. This has been Straight Jacket White Rabbit, signing off. Good night.